Should we experiment on the human genome? Genome editing is being viewed as a new, exciting scientific practice with the potential to improve human health and to benefit the world. Even with this potential, important issues arise from its use. Due to these ethical and futuristic issues which I'll be covering, experimenting on genes should be illegal, unless all the concerns are well documented and people who are interested in gene editing are fully aware of the potential risks. Today I'll be talking about the ethical and futuristic lens. From an ethical standpoint, CRISPR is a fairly new technology and there are many undiscovered risks. And then gene editing also goes against people's religions and morals. From a futuristic lens, CRISPR would only be available to the wealthy. It can create a superior race. The battle for eugenics would continue to worsen, and there would be no diversity or individuality in the world. Ethical lens. A major concern from the ethical lens is that gene editing can cause off-target mutation that can drastically affect someone in future generations for the worse. In October of 2020, Dieter Eagly, an assistant professor of developmental cell biology at Columbia University, performed a study regarding CRISPR. Eagly and his colleagues tested CRISPR's genome editing effects on embryos carrying mutation in a gene called EYS, and that stands for eye-shut homolog, which can cause hereditary blindness. And then the following results showed that a single break in the DNA caused by CRISPR can result in the loss of an entire chromosome, sometimes a large segment of the chromosome as well. And this is not good because it can cause chromosome abnormalities, making these embryos prone to disease, problems in growth or development, mental and physical impairments, and the loss of a chromosome can even prove fatal, as it can cause miscarriages. CRISPR can cause genetic off-target mutation in the embryos, which could drastically impact the lives of the embryos for the worst, and the future generations as well. Now moving on to religion through the ethical lens. When asked specifically about their own religious and moral views about genetic engineering, most Christians, Protestants, born-again Christians, Catholics, and a majority of Muslims say they're opposed to it. The only community to accept genetic engineering was the Jewish community. And the Catholic Church is strongly against the idea of altering someone's genes. The Church believes that we should not be modifying God's design for the body. We are designed in God's image, and not as products that we can mess with and modify in our preferences. And then here I included a graph which includes non-religious, moderately religious, and highly religious people. And then from the graph you can see that non-religious people tend to accept human editing or human gene editing compared to highly religious people who do not accept it. Now moving on to the futuristic lens. One major concern for the futuristic lens, as with many new technologies, there's a concern that genome editing will only be accessible to the wealthy. This would increase existing disparities between the rich and the poor when it comes to accessing healthcare and other inventions. And then also, some people worry that we take into the extreme and germline editing can create a class of individuals who will be defined by the quality of their engineered gene. This will be not good because this will put non-genetically modified people at a disadvantage and be viewed as inferior compared to genetically modified people. And then non-genetically modified people in the future would struggle to compete for jobs, they'll be competing for everything against these genetically modified people, and they'll be at a disadvantage. Tina Rulli, a professor of philosophy at the University of California, Davis, argues that despite government regulations and risks of adverse effects, the lure of designer babies with biological advances for a thriving, ultra-competitive world is a siren call for those who can afford it. Historically, creating babies whose appearance is uphold societal, political, genetic status of superiority is an idea that reached mass popularity in Nazi Germany. Genetic engineering would only increase racial and wealth inequality. The battle for eugenics would continue to simply worsen, and this would surely cause problems in the future. Do I believe gene editing will eventually become a common occurrence in the world? I do. I think it will eventually become a common occurrence. And if that is the case, I do think that people should be practicing informed consent. Informed consent is when you're fully aware of the potential risks that something may cause, an example, gene editing. If you're a parent planning on having a designer baby, you should be fully aware of the potential risks that this can cause. You should be aware of the potential mutations that could occur. You should be aware that you can potentially be ruining this child's life. So, in conclusion, gene editing is a very new, exciting scientific practice with an enormous amount of potential. However, as of right now, the proven negatives outweigh the potential positives.
Thank you. Could you explain to us how your research question evolved as you moved through the research process?
So initially, I was completely opposed to the idea of gene editing, but as I did some of my research, I eventually found that I think it could be a good thing in the future if all of the potential risks are identified. So it moved in sort of a direction that, however, I think it could be a good thing if all the potential risks are known about.
Okay. How is your conclusion in conversation with the body of literature and other research sources that you examined?
So my conclusion as of right now, the proven negatives outweigh the potential positives. So if I go back into my presentation, I talk about how it could be a good thing, but however, as of right now, there's off-target mutations that could be caused. It could possibly create a superior race. It can possibly create disparity between the rich and the poor. So I mean, that just all kind of ties back to my conclusion, which I say proven negatives outweigh the potential positives.
All right, thank you.